One of the more interesting points brought up in the debate last night was Trump's plan to, kill families of terrorists, which is his big plan to fight ISIS. And Trump says that even though carrying out such an order would violate all sorts of international laws, the military wouldn't refuse his orders. Josh, you're a vet. What's your take on this?
He's completely wrong. I can't even imagine. I mean, I remember I deployed twice, once to Bosnia and once to Iraq. And I remember before each time they showed these delightfully hilarious videos about the Geneva Conventions. And it's funny because it's an issue as serious as war crimes, and it's the exact same kind of like workplace training video you'd get about, any kind of inane, silly thing you'd see in a company. There's, just an actor and the guy's like, burn that village, private. And he's like, no, sir, that's against the rule. So, I mean, it's very ingrained in our training to recognize that unlawful orders exist and that if you're given them, you don't follow them. And I can't imagine that there's a situation in which any soldier could rightfully refuse an order that he or she wouldn't take it, because that alone just would feel great to be like, no, sir. So no, it's horseshit. It was nonsense. It was offensive. And, I can't believe that, the lead story was Trump's comments about his penis and not his insistence that his military would not balk at committing war crimes. It's the first time it's really gotten not funny.
Let me offer a counterpoint there, and not to disparage the great majority of men and women in government and in uniform, but we do have to remember that there are individuals who have followed orders to torture people, to assist in detaining them indefinitely, to assassinate people, including 2 American citizens by drone, to drop bombs on cities where they are civilians there, to accidentally or perhaps not so accidentally attack hospitals and medical facilities. I am sad to say that there are people who would do what Trump would ask them to do. Many of our proudest units, Special Forces units, in particular SEAL Team 6 and Delta, have evolved into assassination squads. And they have little to say about their targets, and I'm sure in many cases have little information about their targets other than, here's the guy, here's what he looks like, here's where he lives. I doubt that too many of the special operators, get on Wikipedia and try to see if there might be another side to all this. So while there are an extraordinary number of good people out there, the idea of you just have to look around for the right people to do the dirty jobs. And they're there, and the living proof is the last, 15 years.
I don't completely disagree with what you said, Peter, but I think that's a false equivalency that you're making. As you pointed out, the people who are, arming the drones may not know as much intel about a place as maybe perhaps they should. So yes, if the order gets to the drone pilot or whomever to kill the families or whatever, it could very well happen. But at no point, with the exception of, people on the ground in the thick of war and possibly not in control of their faculties or just an evil bastard, it's one or the other. That's how war crimes happen. They don't happen, at least in the American military. There are very few people who are, actively out there trying to fucking commit war crimes. It doesn't happen. It happens by accident. It's a shame when it does. And it's also a reality of the situation. I mean, when we were in Iraq, we weren't the ones hiding amongst civilians. I mean, yes, civilians died in Iraq and during the Iraq War, but I think the crucial difference between what the America was responsible for and what the enemy was responsible for is that, we judged our mission's success by how few civilian casualties there are, and they judge their mission's success by how many. And that's a very important distinction. And so the idea that there could be policy from the White House that we take out terrorist families, that would never get to the ground. That's my point, is that the Joint Chiefs, the commander, I mean, any number of people along the chain of command would say, fuck no. I don't really.
The problem is that, what you've described about civilians is actually much more connected to the difference to asymmetrical warfare. The difference between having tanks and planes and laser sights and night vision and having a rusty AK-47 as your main weapon. So that is not, in fact, the analogy that or the example that clicks with this. Second, we have seen terrible things done as policy under orders from the president, including torture and indefinite imprisonment. And
we also have to
separate. That's the CIA, man.
We have to separate what the CIA does and what the military does.
Yeah, there's some very blurry lines about who's doing what out there. What constitutes a person in or out of uniform at any given moment in time. But the bottom line is these things were done by somebody. The other thing, though, is that, the order from the White House isn't going to be, Private Patton, go murder that terrorist's wife and kid. Oh, pardon me, sir. Oh, wait. Sorry, you're not at all.
I work for a living, Peter.
Yeah, I had the rank of equivalent of colonel, but yeah, okay, never mind. The thing is that it doesn't come down to Sergeant Patton kill that terrorist wife. It comes to a drone operator with the building at these grid coordinates needs to be destroyed, or to an F-16 pilot who says we're laser designating a house. That's where we need the ordnance. And so it remains, unfortunately, all too real to me that somebody like Trump could find a way to do this. We have justified the murder of civilians. I'm working on more research on Hiroshima right now. And when you talk to some of the veterans and people like that, or even look into the archives from coming out of the White House, I mean, it's like, well, Japan's government wouldn't surrender, so they sort of deserved it. There's this undercurrent of, well, they deserved it, that justifies the murder of people that are, if it was the other way around, if we were the losing side, it would be considered a war crime. So, I mean, not to get, too granular about all this, but unfortunately, history suggests that there are people who are willing to do terrible things. There are people who are willing to follow orders because they're afraid not to. And there are people who are very clever about justifying what they want to happen.